This is the Gospel Revolution.
Since you're knocking on the door, you're begging to come in, yeah. Unaware that all the while love's been knocking from within. You are the love you see, a perfect yet unique, righteous, holy.
Here's the founder and president of the Gospel Revolution, Michael Lilborn Williams.
Hello, Daniel. This is a wonderful day in the Gospel Revolution. My goodness, number 30 of the Pageantry of the 1,000-year reign of Christ. The most dynamic shift and insight into the framework of the gospel itself has now been done after 2,000 years. At least 30 sessions of it, but we've got more to share. And in fact, we have a conference coming up next week, Daniel.
Yeah, March 7th. We are going to start releasing these videos, and they're going to come out hot on YouTube. So make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube channel. That's Gospel Revolution with the number 1. Make sure you're subscribed to our newsletter. If you haven't done that already, go to gospelrevolution.com and you can subscribe to our newsletter right there. And you'll get updates on all of the sessions as they come out. And also, you'll be updated if you get on the newsletter each and every week when we produce new content coming your way.
Boy, that is for sure. And there's no way to think that we are overemphasizing these things. I'm just taking a look here at our last conference, and these numbers are still going up.
Up and up and up.
I mean, it's just, this has never happened before. We might come back 6 months later and find another one or something, but these are going up pretty much daily. And I would say the average is new viewers every day now. And this is what we need. This is getting traction. Traction, especially based on our previous works that we've done and the conferences that we've completed, although incredible. This is the subject of all subjects that has never been examined. And, you would think if you were just examining something that had been missed, you might get a show or two out of it. But we seem to have found the missing part that causes all of the framework that we have done over 40 years of teaching the gospel. Now we have found its framework, and you're going to see just how bound and tied at the ass this is. Now, that sounds like I'm cussing, but I'm not, because this does get all bound together. Within this 1,000-year reign, it begins at an incredible point with David, and then the progression of this through the 1,000-year reign then shows how everything gets bound together. Everyone, God, man, Jesus, Holy Ghost, angels, the devil and all of his labels and titles gets thrown in the lake of fire, and we are free.
Wow. Yeah, preaching.
Yes, and we are free, and we are going to proclaim that freedom. We have been investigating, or we're going to investigate in this next conference coming up next week, the involvement of the Apostle Paul. Is he really a part of this 1,000-year reign prophecy? Is he the bookend, even as Saul, King Saul was the bookend to the beginning of the 1-year reign? Is Paul the bookend to the end of the 1,000-year reign? We're not going to go through that in any more detail because you will turn on your shows and you're going to hear the same thing if I start explaining it again. So we've been really amazed by several things, and one of them is that Daniel's been picking up our translation of First Corinthians. And it's just really blown us away the way that this translation so well fits the 1,000-year reign. It is really quite amazing, isn't it, Dave?
Yeah, it really is. And, I'll give a little, you're not going to give another little tease, but I will. Coming up in the conference, as you said, we're going to talk about the Apostle Paul. Listen to this. This would be out of in your standard Bible. This would be 1 Corinthians chapter 15. But this is chapter 4 of the non-pseudographical Bible. And it says this: also, he was seen, speaking of Jesus, by Cephas, then by all the 12. After that, he was seen of more than 500 of the brethren at one time, the greater part of which remain alive until the present day. Again, he was seen by all 12, including James this time. And last of all, I saw him. The timing of it all seems like a miscarriage, in a sense. How could I see myself as even in the same season with the 12? How can I be an apostle seeing I persecuted the church? However, the same grace that was bestowed upon the 12 was given to me also. And that grace went to work in me, producing more effort in me than it did all of the 12. All of this effort didn't actually come from me, but it came from the grace of God, which was in union with me. Wherefore I or they, we both preach, and you receive.
Yes, and the difference in what they preached was the fact that the disciples preached the resurrection. They knew that Christ had lived, walked, breathed, died, and was risen from the dead. That was the message. As we get into this conference, you are going to be absolutely floored at the information that is there. We've had such a concerted effort, first by Catholicism and also Protestantism, to tie and bind together at the ass all of Christianity to the gospel, and to tie and bind all of the teachers of the New Testament together as being scripture, and therefore it is up to you to force them and shoehorn them in together as one. They are not one. They did not teach the same things. They say they didn't teach the same things. So the delusion is pretty solid, but we are determined to break through that delusion, if with nothing else, but by pointing out what Paul said about Peter, James, and John, about what Peter, James, and John said about Paul. And then Paul tells us, I'm the one that got the message of grace. And I got 12 times what they got. And so you have the 12 tribes of Judah, you have the 12 disciples representing those 12 tribes, and then you have Paul getting 12 times as much of the gospel as what the 12 disciples did. And that is just, we're going to rake through that with as much diligence as we possibly can. These things need to be known. It is time for the confusion to end. It's time for the lunacy to end. It's time for the justification of hate to end. It's time for the justification of judgment of each other and preaching of hell and all of this. It is time for it to end on planet Earth. And we are putting a concerted effort into seeing the manifestation of the results of the work of the cross operating in the minds of human beings around the world.
And all of this is happening with our understanding of the pageantry of the 1,000-year reign of Christ. And that's what we've been doing now, going into session number 30. We are looking at all of the pageantry that led up to the death, burial, and resurrection of Christ. We've been looking at the 12 tribes. We're going to pick that up here in Genesis 49 again today. And that's going to feed right into the conference. So once again, make sure next week you are ready, starting next Friday, March 7th, for the conference to come out. As we said, it will be released on YouTube, as well as you'll get the newsletter, and it'll come out in every other platform that we have. So make sure you're ready, because we're coming in hot.
Boy, it is Hear the motor? Vroom, vroom. That's not a car outside. That's Daniel's motor running.
Gentlemen, start your engines.
I am telling you. And started they are. And so here we go. We don't want to delay this any at all. What we want to do is bring you up to the door of the Calgary Grace Conference, which begins on the 7th of March. And this will be the bringing this up to the door of this last verse in here that we will be covering, and that goes into the tribe of Benjamin.
Yeah, the wolf of the tribe of Benjamin.
Ooh. So the title of this is going to be explained right off the bat, and the Lion of the tribe of Judah, we're covering that now. And then we see that the wolf of the tribe of Benjamin follows up in this prophecy. This prophecy took place 1,800 years before the cross. It took place 800 years before the beginning of the 1,000-year reign, which is recorded here. It goes all the way through to the law remaining in place. It goes all the way through to the gathering together of all, including the lost tribes or the divorced tribes. It goes all the way through the understanding of bringing together all. But it doesn't just do that, does it?
No.
Yeah. And so what it does then, it shows us how that all gets bound together. Mm. I'm telling you, we need to relook at Jesus's teachings. Whatsoever is bound on earth is bound in heaven.
Wow.
And whatsoever is loosed on earth is loosed in heaven. And we've been binding and loosing demons, silly, America's foremost authority on demonology sitting here. Silliness. These things were about the power, the work of the cross. And those things that have been bound together and then bound in heaven and in earth is the work of the cross, binding Jew and Gentile. You're going to see it here today. Mm. You want to know about binding and loosing? We're going to teach you about some binding today. And in that binding, everybody got loose at the same time.
Wow.
So we have excellent news for you. So we're going to start out again because it's very important to keep in view what it is we're talking about. So we are going to read verse 1. We're going to reaffirm where we are, and then we're going to jump down to verse 11. We'll go through 10 again, and then we'll go right straight into 11, which is our next verse in this conference or in this session.
This is Genesis chapter 49 and verse 1. And Jacob called his sons and said, "Gather together that I may tell you what shall befall you in the last days."
Now, we, of course, took an entire session and showed you every place in the Hebrew scriptures where the last days is spoken of. And we could not find anything that was not pointing to the last 1,000 years from the giving of the scepter of righteousness to David all the way up to the cross. Those were the last days. And of course, last days gets last date. We got an update on the last days with the 70 weeks of Daniel. That was an update. We got an update with the image of Nebuchadnezzar. That was an update. And that was that segment of the last days. And we had the four beasts, which is another segment of the last days all the way up. There are more, and we're ferreting them out all the time. And we still want to bring those to you. We are not going to left any door left shut. These doors have been left closed for 2,000 years. And it's time for us to slam them open and shine the light of the gospel into this, and then let them proclaim the gospel that they so boldly proclaim. Yes, the 70 weeks of Daniel proclaims the gospel and the cutting off of the last 3.5 years of the Great Tribulation, which was to come. That now people are prophesying the end of the world because they don't know that the end of the world got cut off.
Wow.
That's yes, it is there. The utter destruction, all the demons crawling up from one side of the planet to the other, in the north and the south, and wham, they're going to devour the whole human race. And cut off. And it's not just Jesus, the prophets, and Paul all taught us about this cutting off of the last 3.5 years. This is not speculative. We're not looking around wondering if we're right or not. This is solid as Jesus raising from the dead, which that isn't even solid, though, to some of our mystic friends, and imparting righteousness to all. So the power of this framework will cause it to stay in your brain the rest of your life. If to keep a picture in your mind, it needs a framework. And we've been teaching this picture, the big picture and little parts of the picture, but now we have the framework for the entire thing. And so reaffirming that the last days means specifically, and then redefines itself as it gets closer. Even the last week of the prophecy is considered the last days of the last week. But the entirety of the last days begins at the enthronement of David and is carried out all the way through the resurrection.
You mean to tell me that Nebuchadnezzar's dream is not about Russia and China?
No, and it wasn't about Nebuchadnezzar either. I mean, he wanted it to be that way. And as Ethan shared with us, he wanted to change that image. Everybody wants to change this imagery into something they need it to be. And Nebuchadnezzar tried to change it all to gold. He says, well, if I'm the head and I'm the gold, well, let's just change it all to gold. I don't like any history after me. Everybody thinks history ought to end with them. Get off of it. You're going to die and the world's going to go on. Good news. You're going to die and the world's going to go on. You say, Mike, I thought you was here to encourage me. I am. You don't have to tell your children all this crap and leave them with a burden of unfinished work of the cross. What a horrible legacy to leave your children, that you taught them that the cross was insufficient. And that Christ is going to have to come back again to gain what the scriptures and Christ and Paul taught even was completely finished at the cross.
Wow. Where were you 20 years ago?
I don't know. I'm still with my head half up where the sun don't shine, I guess. I don't know.
So as we've been going through Genesis chapter 49, we have found that there are two tribes that are prominent in the 1,000-year reign. Actually, it's all about them. And that is the tribe of Judah and the tribe of Benjamin. And with the representation of the Levite tribes overseeing the priesthood. So as we have gone through already the first 10 verses of this chapter, we've talked about Reuben, we've talked about Simeon, we've talked about Levi. I just mentioned Levi. And we've been talking about for the last few weeks here, Judah. And of course, Judah, he is the line of the tribe of Judah. This is where the line in which King David comes from. This is also the line in which Jesus is born. And as we pick up about this discussion about Judah in verse 10, this 10, Michael, has it's amazing. Wow. The content of one single verse in this prophecy.
There's 1,000 years in this one verse.
My goodness. And it reads this: the scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet, until Shiloh comes, and he shall be the obedience and the gathering of the people.
Well, 1,000 years is what we just looked at. And this is why this teaching on an understanding of the 1,000-year reign is so imperative. We get to see major things. Number one, a kingdom was established of righteousness. The scepter of that kingdom is the scepter of righteousness. And we know that Jesus is the Lion of the tribe of Judah. We know that Jesus did not come to do away with the law, but to fulfill the law, and it would stay in force until Shiloh comes. There's nothing ambiguous about this. The next phase of this is that the result of the until the law would stay between his feet until. So at the point where the law is no more until it done tilled, I like making up my own language. And unto him, the unto Shiloh or to the Christ shall the gathering of the people be, or their obedience, as Daniel's translation says. But both are very effective here. In fact, together they are a double whammy. It is that Christ's obedience is the gathering of all the people. And it doesn't require the obedience of the people. It only required the obedience of Christ to gather all people in. Let me say that 1,000,000 times over and over. It only took the obedience of Christ to gather all the people in. And what is Christianity? It has turned this on its head. It requires your obedience. It requires your believing. It requires everything out of you. It is as though Jesus never even was born, much less lived and died on a cross and rose from the dead. But this is how this gathering takes place. It is by his obedience. So here is 1,000 years. It's number 10. Maybe we can make something spiritual out of that. So multiply and to the 10th power, whatever it might be. The power of this verse. If you ever want to show somebody 1,000 years in one verse, this is it, folks.
Yeah.
And so then what he does, and as he's built up to this, he has said, okay, this is the last days. Now let me explain to you how each of these and all of these, he said, okay, you're out and you're out and you're out and you're out. And even Judah, and the manifestation of Christ brings that back in again. And the power of this in bringing in the priesthood and the king. So you know that Jesus was the great priest of this new covenant, and he was the king of this new covenant. And you're going to see that take place here, how that king and that priest was fulfilled. And in the fulfillment of the kingly and the priestly role was not only the gathering in, but he bound us all together. Do we need a verse?
You're on fire, brother. Verse 11, binding his donkey to the vine and his donkey's colt to the choice vine. He washed his garments in wine and his clothes in the blood of grapes. His eyes are darker than wine and his teeth are whiter than milk.
Well, there's a lot here. We want to not get bound down in the
bound down. Get it? Bound.
Yeah,
binding?
I know. I just can't get away from the word, right? So we're going to quote a couple of other places where these phrases are used, so that you'll know we're not just going off on a tangent to try to fix this someplace. We really have gone through this. We've been completely open about, we don't care what it means. We just want to know what it means. One of the first things I want to point out is that this covers the king, the scepter. It covers the kingship that Christ carried out. And also that the fact of the law was going to be fulfilled by Christ, because it says the law will be between his feet until. Do you see the ending of the law coming there?
Mm-hmm.
It's very clear that the law is coming to an end. And then so this kingly role, and I think the next verse really helps us bring in the priestly role even more. So this one is showing what this kingly role does. And Daniel, is there any other place? So we've got asses and colts and all vines binding up colts and asses and everything else. It's like, give us some help here.
Zechariah 9:9 says this: Rejoice greatly, O daughter of Zion, O daughter of Jerusalem. Behold, your king is coming to you. He is just and having salvation, lowly and riding on a donkey, a colt, a foal of a donkey. I will cut off the chariot from Ephraim and the horse from Jerusalem. The battle bow shall be cut off. He shall speak peace to the nations. His dominion shall be from sea to sea and from river to the ends of the earth.
Well, and that is showing that this is about the ministry of Christ, and the symbolism here is very strong, but it's also very clear. Daniel, is there any other thing that we have here to help us understand what this means, or do you have anything to say on that?
Well, it's all inclusive. Verse 10 says, I will cut off the chariot from Ephraim. Remember, Ephraim are these 10 tribes, these 10 other brothers that were, they left Israel. And remember when we talk about how there's only 2 tribes that are represented with, of course, part of the tribe of Levi. There's only 2 tribes that are represented in the nation of Israel. So when we see all of this prophecy about Israel and all of these things, it's talking about the tribe of Judah and the tribe of Benjamin. What did the other tribes become? They became Ephraim. Mm-hmm. And so when we see this discussion about Ephraim, we're not talking about Judah and Benjamin. We're talking about the other, quote, lost tribes, unquote, that have been discussed many, many times. We also see a horse from Jerusalem. Jerusalem was the capital of Israel. So we're talking about now those 2 tribes that remained with the representation of Levites. And then we also see that he is speaking peace to all nations.
Wow.
So whatever is happening here is happening to the lost tribes of Israel, Ephraim, the 2 tribes of Israel, Judah and Benjamin in Jerusalem. And we are talking about all the Gentile nations, all the nations of the earth.
Yeah, when you have a man riding a donkey into town was prophesied, it has to mean something.
Right.
So Daniel's bringing us up to date. Do we have anything else on this, Daniel, before we go into this verse?
So it says that that he is just having salvation lowly and riding on a donkey. You know, it's interesting, the story that we get in the New Testament about this is that Jesus told his disciples to go find a donkey that no one had ever ridden before. So this is something that's never been done in the history of all of Jerusalem, in the history of the Bible. This, whatever is being represented here with Jesus riding on this donkey, is something that has never been taken place before.
Yeah, because donkeys were there to carry the burden, right?
Mm-hmm.
They didn't carry people.
Yep.
They were not designed to carry people, as by design. Who designed this donkey? But these were called beasts of burden. And so a man riding on a donkey, goodness gracious, I don't even know how to describe that. It'd be like a clown arriving in a Cadillac instead of a clown car. I mean, that's a very poor analogy, but that's all I can pull up at the moment. The symbolism here is, as Daniel said to you, is that this is something out of place. This doesn't happen, symbolizing the rest of what was about to happen had never happened, and nobody had ever seen it happen, even as this very simple symbolism of Jesus riding on a donkey. I mean, it's,
and it's a symbol of humble humility and low. It says right here, lowly and riding on a donkey. This just refreshed in my memory here where it says, "O daughter of Jerusalem." Wasn't that in reference when we were going through Migdal Eder? Mm-hmm. Wasn't that the daughter? And so listen, rejoice, O daughter of Zion, O daughter of Jerusalem. Behold, your king is coming to you.
Well, and we could stop and go back and teach entire sessions on what we've already taught on. If you have not been someone who's followed the teachings of the Gospel Revolution and Mike Williams Ministries, you need to go back a few. You're going to find a tremendous amount of information. You're going to also find places, it's like, wait a minute, I thought they said this. Well, we're not. We've been growing, folks. We change our minds. When the scriptures require us to change our mind, we change our minds. And you're not going to find hardly anyone out there that once they set their doctrine in a box, even those who say we don't have doctrine, you have doctrine. We've turned the word doctrine into some stupid name. It only means teachings. If you say you have no doctrines, it's saying you have no teachings. It's like there's teachings and there's doctrines. It's all the same thing. They have doctrines. So you know those doctrines. Well, that's teachings. That's all that it means. So, boy, I'm glad I got that out of so here we have this lead up now to verse 11 and this binding of his foal unto the vine. So the one thing that I finally worked through, this thing said his vine and then unto the choice vine. And I was thinking, I don't know how to work through this because we got two different vines here. Mm-hmm. And then I realized that through the reading of this, finally to read it in context, the vine is the choice vine in the first statement. It's just, it's defining the vine more. This is not two different vines. It's just defining the vine more clearly in the second one. And I think the reason it's defining it more clearly is because this is the point where the role of the vine begins to encompass more than what it was thought to have encompassed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just as we read there in Zechariah, that this is an all-inclusive. And when you and I were starting to look at this verse 11, we were getting verse damned for a while because we were stuck because we missed the context. And, but we started asking the questions. And isn't that what we say? Keep asking the questions. And the question that kept coming up to us is, who is he?
Yeah.
It says, behold, his donkey. Well, who is he that has this donkey? And so the context was our Savior. We had to find out who exactly he was. And so we backed up to a verse. All we had to do is go back one verse and find out who's being spoken of. And the last person being mentioned here is Shiloh,
right,
which we learned was the Messiah. This was Christ. Until Messiah comes, and to him shall the obedience and the gathering of all the people be. This Messiah will not only be the obedience and the gathering of all the people, but will bind his donkey to the vine and his donkey's colt to the choice vine.
Let me expound on this just a little bit more about this all inclusion in our Israel only friends. It is true. Israel is the only one that was given the law or the covenants or anything else. And, but you have to discount everything that the scriptures foretell, because yes, God only had to cancel the law out against Israel. God only had to fulfill prophecy for Israel. But the problem here is that Israel had become entwined into the Gentile world. 10 whole tribes.
Yeah.
You couldn't tell them a Jew from a Gentile with these guys. Probably had a very low percentage, actually, of Jewish heritage in them of these 10 tribes. So now, if you're going to pull those back together, and that's not the only picture we get of God's redemption of Israel is the redemption of the world.
Yeah.
God's redemption of Israel is the redemption of the world. God's redemption of Israel is the redemption of the world. And I could say that a few more times and not get tired of it, because we my heart aches for these people who somebody has meticulously gone in and caused them to hyper focus on one thing. See, it's for Israel. See, it's for Israel. See, it's for Israel. And that is all true, but they are ignoring the big picture. And that is this wonderful thing. And here in one verse, once again, we have the gathering, and now we have the binding together. So we have one vine. That vine is Jesus, right? And what does that vine do?
It produces fruit.
It produces fruit, and it is binding two different groups together. Now, and once again, this choice vine, the second vine, is not the one that produces fruit, and the first one doesn't produce fruit. this is all the same vine.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what muddled this a bit for me. So, but now we have so let's just read it that way. The choice vine, the one that produces fruit, the one that is abundant. We have this typology of them going into the land of promise and to the promised land and bringing out these melon-sized grapes and carrying just one bundle of grapes between their shoulders, setting a stick on two men's shoulders and carrying one bundle of grapes. These are big grapes. And from what I understand, what we read, those type of grapes, I don't know that they're still that big, but they still grow in that area.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Mm. And so it is known to produce the largest grapes of any place in the world. So the power of this then is the foal and the colt of the foal, and his ass is colt. So the donkey's colt, and so these two are symbolic of the nation of Israel and all the other people.
Mm.
So we find him binding these two together. So, but see, this has happened after he's gathered all the people in.
Yes.
Now is the binding together of all the people.
Mm-hmm.
So this is making sure that that what the Messiah did, he not only brought everybody in and left us to struggle to believe and obey. Thanks for playing. But he also bound how can you bind everything to everyone and everything together, and then people jump into that later on? How do you jump into the body of Christ after the body of Christ is complete? How do you do that, folks? And there's nothing jumped into your body and become a part of your body after the fact. And it's just a defiance of all logic, all physics, all biology, everything, anatomy, every science is defied in this type and shadow here of this taking place. It also says he washed his garments in wine and his clothes in the blood of grapes. Now, wine is a big thing here. It comes up in the next verse also. But the declaration of this, once you expand and get into this a little bit, if you're washing your clothes in the juice of wines, there ain't a whole lot of grapes around there.
Yeah.
So I think this is the thing it's saying is that the abundance of this new wine is so great, you can wash your clothes in it. You can. You don't need water anymore.
No.
You don't need water anymore to get your clothes clean. You can wash them in wine, just make them all red, right? And then it says, and his clothes in the blood of grapes. This is also the typology because the clothes that Jesus wore, they draped around him a purple garment. Mm-hmm. Now, the purple garment that Jesus had and was stained with this blood, that purple garment is symbolic of the priesthood. So he had the crown of thorns, symbolizing the kingship, and he also had on this purple robe. And purple was used exclusively for the priesthood. So when they wrapped that robe around him, that was the initiation that was the symbolism of him being the priest. So he was the king, symbolized by a crown of thorns, and mocking the king and mocking the priesthood that he was taking. The power of this just becomes an incredible, real image for us.
It's really amazing. Again, we have just a couple verses that tell the whole story. And isn't that what we've been seeing in the 1,000-year reign of Christ is this fractal? It keeps repeating itself. And here we again, just by looking at the tribe of Judah and the lion of the tribe of Judah being Jesus, we see the whole story from beginning to end. And, you said that there about verse 10, it's 1,000 years of history right there in one. And then we see the following two verses are just the effects of that.
Yes.
And that we have all been bound together. As you were talking about that, I remember the teaching that you did several years ago on 2 Corinthians 5 about how the love of Christ constraineth us,
Yes.
That funneling together. And that's what we see here, this funneling, but also this binding, and then it starts talking about how we've been reconciled to Christ and being made one, that he who knew no sin became sin, that we would become the righteousness of God in Christ. That's the scepter. The scepter isn't passed. There's not authorities and powers that be anymore, but instead of there being a scepter of righteousness, we have been made that scepter of righteousness.
When Paul started teaching in Romans 9, I believe it is, if not, it's 10, and you can check me out here, where he starts out saying, my heart's prayer and desires that all of Israel might be saved.
Yeah, that's 9.
Now, see, Paul wasn't saying all of Israel was not saved. Mm-hmm. He was mocking this teaching that they needed to get saved.
Yeah.
And that entire chapter then goes on, and I remember he's writing to the church at Rome, Peter's church, which was trying to get everybody saved. And Paul said, wouldn't that be wonderful if all of Israel was saved?
Mm.
Oh my goodness, wouldn't that be great? And but if you follow that through, Paul begins to deconstruct in that chapter the requirement of belief and the requirement of obedience, and puts it on chopping block and lays it off. The last verses are the conclusion of that chapter, says that this would all happen because God would do it.
Yeah.
So he declares that not only by the end of the chapter, Paul so artfully has brought in all of Israel, he's also brought in all the Gentiles, mm-hmm. and let them know that not only has Israel, the phrase there in verse 27, I think it is, of chapter 9, where he says that, and those that were not a people shall be called the people of God. Well, those that are not a people were the 10 tribes that were scattered into the Gentile world. So his question, that all Israel might be saved, he's saying that not only is Benjamin and Judah saved, but also all of those that scattered tribes are also saved. Mm-hmm. So Paul is asking a rhetorical question, a facetious question, a build up to his teaching by comparison. And then he lays it out and then brings it to an entire conclusion then. It is so powerful. But you see, if you've been taught that everybody needs to get saved, then this caters into that. But you have to isolate that verse, and you have to pretend it doesn't say at the end that everybody was brought in. Mm-hmm. And he challenges their view. So then, having faith is what it is. So you're saying that faith comes by hearing and hearing by the word. But didn't they all hear?
Yeah.
I got a problem with that. And then that's when he makes this incredible declaration that not only is Israel being saved, has been saved, but also the people who were not a people, which that's a direct statement about the lost 10 tribes, and also brings in in everyone, especially going into chapter 11, is where he brings in more clarity to the Gentiles. And you know what? He starts talking to the Gentiles and basically shames them. He says, you Jews are trying to exclude Gentiles, and you Gentiles are trying to exclude Jews. Mm-hmm. Dummy.
Yeah.
While you're fighting over this, you're missing out on the union of God Almighty and Christ and angels and you and one heaven and one earth, while you're quibbling about Jews saying Gentiles aren't in and Gentiles saying Jews have to believe, and vice versa. Or the Gentiles have to be circumcised and they have to do this and they have to keep these 4 laws, as James required to even consider that a Gentile was anywhere near salvation at all. All of that was a lie. Paul was correcting a lie. Paul was correcting the lie of James. Let me say that again. Paul was correcting the lie of James. And Peter, you're going to find out that Peter was called, but Paul makes it very clear he got seduced and no longer preached the gospel. Peter once preached the gospel. He had good reason to. Christ let down a sheet from heaven and showed him, don't call unclean that which I've already cleansed. And then it just didn't stick. I mean, every occasion that Peter had to learn, he perverted that learning.
Mm-hmm.
I tell you, when you stop and think, what kind of power did James have over Peter? He listened to James and not Jesus.
Mm.
That's a lot of power over somebody. And this man has held sway over the entire world for 2,000 years and blinded us to the understanding of the gospel, but no more.
Mm.
No more. We will not keep quiet while the world is desperately needing the gospel.
Amen, brother. Well, okay, so this is Judah, and Michael, there are, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 more brothers that are being spoken of in this chapter. Let's spend a few minutes and talk about a couple more of these.
Did we go through verse 12 yet?
Yeah, I think so. His eyes are darker than wine, and his teeth are whiter than milk.
Yeah, and all of that is saying is the richness of wine, what are all the definitions? Or number one, it makes you feel good. But wine is a sign of prosperity and all of these things. And his teeth, don't get bogged down about his teeth. It just simply means that there's the whiteness here is representation of the righteousness.
Yeah, you remember that you mentioned about the promised land that was had the big grapes. It also said that it was flowing with milk and honey.
Milk and honey.
And that's, again, just a sign of abundance and prosperity.
Yes.
Exactly. And the promise. It's the promise.
The promise is fulfilled after the gathering and the binding. Mm-hmm. The gathering and the binding. And man, I tell you what, you need to go back and read what Jesus said about everything that's bound on earth is bound in heaven, whatsoever is on
earth. All right, verse 13. Zebulun shall dwell by the haven of the sea, and shall become a haven for ships, and his border shall adjoin Sidon.
Yeah, so this Zebulun didn't go all the way to the coast of Galilee, and it didn't go all the way to the coast of the Mediterranean. But the last town before you get to the coast is Sidon, and then, of course, the Sea of Galilee. But they did set up shipping ports. That's what Zebulun was known for. Now, you've got to realize that this is hundreds and hundreds of years before this land was occupied. So you've got Zebulun. If you want to pull up a little map, just Google or whatever, and just pull up maps of the 12 tribes, and you're going to see Zebulun and Naphtali right next to each other. And then, with those two there, we have some very important prophecies that happened about this particular land between the seas.
Yeah, Isaiah chapter 9, verse 1, nevertheless, the gloom will not be upon her who is distressed. And even at the first, he lightly esteemed the land of Zebulun and the land of Naphtali, and afterward more heavily oppressed her by the way of the sea beyond the Jordan in the Galilee of the Gentiles. Really interesting how it says the Galilee of Gentiles. It's always captivated my mind. The people who walked in darkness have seen a great light. Those who dwell in the land of the shadow of death, upon them the light has shined.
And man, we can take you to Psalms 23, the valley of the shadow of death. This is where Jesus preached and taught, and the valley of the shadow of death was in the valley of the shadow of the Mount of Olives, and all of this. And there's so many details about the area immediately around the temple, the road that went out of the temple, the place where Jesus was crucified, the place where Jesus was buried, the place where his feet touched the Mount of Olives on that day of crucifixion, not some futuristic thing. not a Golgotha off on a hill somewhere that somebody saw landing in an airplane at a certain time of day where the sun was shining just right. But instead, Golgotha, the place of skulls, it was plural. And the place of skulls, all you need is some Roman history. They crucified people, especially on the road going into the Eastern Gate, to let the Jews know who the authorities were. That's why that may not be why they crucified people, but why they crucified them where they did was to exercise fear.
Mm. And then, of course, you have the fulfillment of this prophecy in Matthew chapter 4. Now, when Jesus heard that John had been put in prison, he departed to Galilee, and leaving Nazareth, he came and dwelt in Capernaum, which is by the sea, in the regions of Zebulun and Naphtali, that it might be fulfilled, which was spoken by the prophet Isaiah.
So, yes, this is just a couple of places where we want you to see that this prophecy of the last days is so sound. It's not movable. You cannot mess this up. Now, what Christianity has done, they really have, instead of the vine tying the colt and the foal together, they really have tied their asses together, and they're running different directions with their ass tied together.
Mm.
And folks, it doesn't work. Are you tired of running around with your ass tied to something else that doesn't even make sense?
Mm.
This is the power of God. What we are sharing with you is the power of God. It's called the gospel. Paul, the one called to represent this mystery and to preach this mystery, said the gospel itself is now the power of God. I remember, oh my God, the transformation that I went through, and it was such a major growth time for me in understanding the gospel. I read through that and I said, the gospel is the power of God. Wait, I thought the power of God was the parting of the Red Sea. I thought the power of the gospel was the power of God was creating the worlds.
Mm.
I thought the power of God was that axe that they threw in the water and they had to find it and it floated to the top. I thought the power of God was all of these things. I thought the power of God was the cross. I thought the power of God was a virgin birth. I thought the power of God was this and that. But then we come to this incredible place, and I'm going to answer this. Hold on 1 minute. Sean Smith, let me warn you at first that we are on the air recording our show that will be out this Friday. How are you, my friend? Daniel and I are here.
Hello, Sean.
Hospital.
You're still in the hospital. And we've been thinking about you, my friend. I let the people know in our last show that this was going to happen. So you're here. You are live on the Powercast. You are, goodness gracious, you're my hero. I've told you that all your life. So
Yeah. Well, I want to say hi to all your listeners. Let them know that they have no better teacher
oh,
than you.
well, that was worth answering the phone for.
Well, love Jesus. There's no doubt in my mind that you'll do them right by the words you say.
Well, you're doing them right by just being you, Sean. Everybody in the Gospel Revolution loves you. We are getting everybody turned on to your videos, and goodness gracious, you've got such powerful things to share. And boy, your trip has been an unbelievable journey. But finding out that everything was finished at the end is what changed your life. So that's what we're trying to share with people.
All right. Now, you're doing it justice. Let me tell you how I'm doing.
Go ahead.
I've got pneumonia again.
Oh my.
Yeah. But I'm whooping butt taking none.
I expected nothing else.
Yes, sir.
There you are, laying there, having your leg removed with pneumonia, and I still get that good laugh out of you. Goodness. You are amazing, my friend.
Well, Jesus is one who's amazing.
Yeah, he is indeed. Well, listen, I'm going to call you back in a bit, and if you're available, we can talk again, but feel free to call anytime. I was waiting for this update, and we were here recording the show, and I accidentally left my ringer on, and it's like, boy, am I glad I did. I don't want to miss this call from Sean. We love you.
Love you, Sean.
Love you guys too.
All right. And we'll talk again real soon. You got get well, get better. We still need you.
I'm glad.
We are too. All right, buddy.
Okay, we'll talk to you guys.
Okay. Bye-bye, Sean.
Bye-bye. What a hero.
Yeah.
A tall man.
The lives of people around the world have been touched by the power of the gospel. A lot of people think that the power of the gospel is getting healed, having perfect health, or having money. That is not the power of the gospel. The power of the gospel is a revelation of righteousness. And that is the power of God. That God has, yes, miracles were used to draw our attention during the time of Christ and the disciples, but that was not what it was all about. It was those healings took place to show us to the great healing, the healing of the nations, and the nations have been healed. And our buddy has gone through so much, but he still has the rejoicing in his heart about the power of the reconciliation of all things. My goodness, what a wonderful thing. Thank you for enjoying that call with us, with Sean. So, Sean, we're going to continue on here. You'll be listening to this soon, I'm sure. So we have these powerful statements that are made. And Daniel, take us on from here.
So Issachar is the next one, and Issachar is a strong donkey. What's up with his sons and donkeys? This one's a strong one. Lying down between two burdens, he saw the rest was good, and that the land was pleasant. He bowed his shoulder to bear a burden, and became a band of slaves.
Yes, this is again a prophetic. It sounds as though it's already happened, but you got to realize this did happen. That's why this is a prophecy of the 1,000-year reign. I mean, these things are spoken of throughout the scriptures, and this actually shows up in 1 Samuel chapter 10, verse 9, I believe. And the power of this, all of these, is worth going into. We're not going to delay and focus too much in on these tribes that all became what is called the lost. These were the divorced tribes of Judah, and became so intermingled into the Gentiles, God had no choice but to redeem the Gentiles too.
The one I was named after, Dan.
Mr. Dan.
Shall judge his people. As one of the tribes of Israel, Dan shall be a serpent by the way, a viper by the path, that bites the horse's heels, so that its rider shall fall backwards. I have waited for your salvation, O Lord.
Well, I'm going to interpret this one. This is about Daniel. And this is about Christianity riding across the bridge on a horse. And, and Daniel just snakes out there and bites his heel, and Christianity falls on his ass. So we're talking about an ass again now. This has a lot of meaning in it, but this is fulfilled history that took place long before the cross. And but remember, this was hundreds of years before it took place. I think that's the most important thing we can say about it.
And one of the prominent characters of the Danite tribe was Samson.
Wow.
And Samson was a judge, and of course, the story of Samson. Mm-hmm. I mean, as you said, each one of these stories we could go into, and we're going to see. You would see the typology, you'd see the fulfillment of prophecy, you'd see the wonderful work of God in each and every one of these stories.
Boy, that is for sure, because Samson again is going to be another type and shadow of Christ, and so have at it. We are sticking with the big picture here, and we're going on down. We're going to gad about now, it looks like.
Verse 19, Gad, a troop shall tramp upon him, but he shall triumph at last.
Well, and at last he did. And this is the, no matter how Gad got trampled over, it's not talking about him recovering his own place and his own land. It's talking about him being gathered in the end. There's a lot of people that take a lot of these prophecies about these 10 tribes, these 10 divorced tribes, that they're going to come back, and they're going to come back, and they're going to come back, and they're going to be brought back in. And people are looking forward to this area of time and a physical bringing back in. The physical bringing back in is never going to happen, because that was not what this was about. This was to be able to tie Gentiles in with the Jewish people for the redemption of all.
Remember that song? I'll run through a troop and leap over a wall.
Oh, yes.
Great is the army that carries out the sword. The Lord utters his voice. I'm moving right along.
Good times, right? Good times.
Verse 20, the bread from Asher shall be rich, and he shall yield royal dainties.
Yeah, this guy liked bread, and he liked sweet bread. There's been a few monarchs that have, once they got sugar, they certainly did do that. I know Queen Elizabeth was the first, was well known for her huge appetite for sugar. Her teeth rotted right out of her head. And so you'll never see a picture of her with a smile, because none of those people ever smiled. I don't think they had a whole lot to smile about. But this is simply showing the humanness, I think, of one of the tribes, and bread was his thing. So I have to say bread's my thing, and I have to avoid it so my teeth don't fall out.
And Naphtali, we mentioned this one already. Naphtali is a deer let loose. He uses beautiful words. This is one that was tied together with Zebulun.
Yes. And in this area, I think the fact that he uses beautiful words, I think that there may be some connection to the fact that this is where Jesus preached. And we've not gone into it, because this just simply is not the focus of where we are. We're simply wanting to show you the places that these tribes took up, because the conference is coming, and we need this tied up before we go into session 31, which will be the beginning of the conference.
And one more here before we get to Benjamin is Joseph. Joseph is a faithful bow, a fruitful bow by a well. His branches run over the wall. The archers have bitterly grieved him, shot at him, and hated him. But his bow remained in strength, and the arms of his hands were made strong by the hands of the mighty God of Jacob. From there is the shepherd, the stone of Israel, by the God of your father who will help you, and by the Almighty who will bless you, with blessings of heaven above, blessings of the deep that lies beneath, blessings of the breast and of the womb, blessings of your father have excelled the blessings of my ancestors, up to the utmost bound, to the everlasting hills. They shall be on the head of Joseph, and on the crown of the head of him who was separate from his brothers. I think this might have been Jacob's favorite.
Yeah, exactly. So Joseph, of course, we know as the perfect type and shadow of Christ. And that's why we took up what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 verses? Six verses. That's why we took up 6 verses with this. Now, the interesting thing about this, I think the tribe of Joseph lost its lineage also.
Yeah.
But the thing of it is this powerful bringing back in. How was Joseph brought back in?
Mm-hmm.
Joseph was brought back in Christ himself. So if you read down through this is how, and folks, if we had time to learn all of these, I'm sure we could do a much better job at it. But it's just that our focus is in encapsulating this 1,000-year reign and making sure we understand that these other 10 tribes, even the tribe of Joseph, became obscured, extinct, if you will, but was brought back in by the type and shadow of Christ himself. And I think all of the tribes probably would do that.
My goodness. And this is also just repainting the picture of this binding. And what we see in all of these, Michael, up to this point is outside of Judah, of the other 11 that we have looked at, outside of Judah, none of these are brought to the end except within Judah.
Yeah.
In other words, they're not prophesied in having a part and a play in the end.
Yeah.
Judah is the one. He's the one who has the scepter. He's the one who has the Messiah. And he's actually the one, as even Joseph prophesied, that all the brothers would bow down before him, that he is the one who brought all of this in. And of course, that all points to Christ, who is the Lion of the tribe of Judah.
Yeah. And so these, Judah, I think I misstated earlier about Judah. Actually, it was the line of Joseph that became extinct and then shows back up in the life of Christ himself. So all of this is designed to show you in some way how that all the tribes were redeemed, including their Gentile family, which was the entire earth. So the interesting thing here is this last one is the youngest of the tribe of the tribes of Israel, Jacob's sons. And he's the one that was spoken of. Goodness gracious. Joseph is mentioned just before this. And the relationship between Joseph and Benjamin, I think that the two of these being put side by side is very important. I think that the fact that we've just talked about Joseph, type and shadow of Christ, and now we're talking about Benjamin, the type and shadow of Paul.
What?
Yeah.
Benjamin and Paul?
Benjamin is Paul, and Paul is Benjamin. Read this verse for us, Daniel.
Benjamin is a ravenous wolf. In the morning he shall devour the prey, and at night he shall divide the spoil.
We mentioned this to you last week, I think, and we've been trying to hold back because we didn't want to blow our whole conference coming up, and you've got 6 sessions. We might tell you that you're going to have a delightful time with also Don Beresford Bartlett again.
He raises from the dead.
Once again, and we're never going to let the man rest. May he rest in peace? No. We're going to keep bringing him back. And I think he's delighted about that, to be honest. And now I can say anything I want and can't correct me. So our relationship is stronger now than it was in life. But the power of this imagery and Paul being this ravenous wolf, Paul was of the tribe of Benjamin. So here we have the beginning of the tribe of Benjamin, and then we have the last of the tribe of Benjamin showing up in Paul, Saul, and Paul. You're going to have some powerful things to learn about just that statement alone. And what he did, this is, there's lots of verses on this. We're going to go into the deepest research now during the conference about Benjamin, about the Apostle Paul. and that it seems as though now, if we're right, we're going to find that Paul was prophesied about.
What?
In scriptures. Yes. Lay me out and coat me over with tar. I don't know where that came from. But I rejected this thought for 53 years. But it doesn't make any difference how old or how blind you are. You could still see the light. And I'm so delighted that this has become a part of my life and a part of the gospel revolution.
I can't wait. I'm so excited, and I'm excited for everyone to hear what we have to say and to challenge and to question us and to
Please.
Put us on trial. And we're just here to learn. And so hopefully you are ready for the conference coming up. Again, that's March 7th. These videos are coming out on YouTube. So make sure you're subscribed to Gospel Revolution with the number 1 on YouTube. Make sure you're subscribed to the newsletter, because that's how you're going to find out where these sessions are coming out.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys. We have to go. We got to get ready for a conference here.
I want to go to that buffet that Don always talks about. And so it is. We must leave you, family and friends. If you'd like to know anything about the Gospel Revolution, then call our office on
832-318-9339
and speak to us about how you want to participate. Or go to www.gospelrevolution.com and hit the connect link. You can find us on your favorite social media network, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Please be sure to hit that subscribe, share, and like button on whatever platform you are listening. Now it's good night from Daniel Rouse. I am frozen, but I'm not in Wisconsin.
No, that's true. You brought it all here.
Sorry.
No. Sorry, don't get it.
What did you say earlier? Lay me out and cover me in tar?
There you go. That's what my intents are for Daniel. So. I don't know where that came from. I've never heard such a thing in my life. Inspired of God. That's all you can say. Inspired of God. Thank you, guys. We do, just like with Sean, we're so glad that we were able to take that call in the middle of this show. Sean, forgive us for putting you on the spot, but I knew no matter what condition he was in, he was still going to have something to share, and the joy of his understanding of the gospel to let people see that it's so easy to view life as difficult, and we're not trying to minimize anything anybody's going through. Sometimes you do need to stop and think about what others are. Sometimes it causes it not to seem so hard.
We sure hope that you enjoyed today's Powercast. And remember, we'll be here to do the same thing all over again next week, only
mucho grande better.
So knocking on the door, you're begging to come in, yeah. Unaware that all the while love's been knocking from within. You are the love you see, a perfect yet unique, righteous, holy. Lost and alone, staring at the unknown, and these words be the cause that guides you right home. We are one, we are love, we are. Know where you gotta be, nothing to complete. It's not a thing that you need, you're the love. Just remember to breathe and take a second off. Look, I'm just trying to remind you that you're perfectly divine, flawlessly designed. When you're lost and alone, staring at the unknown, let these words be the compass. We are one, we are love.
deconstructing religion and barbecuing the sacred cows of Christianity before your very eyes. You are listening to
The Gospel Revolution.